am Frances Callier.
And I'm Angela V. Shelton.
And we're Frangela.
You know what you need in your life? The Final Word podcast.
Yes, you do.
That's right. It is the final word on all things political and pop cultural.
Where we make real news real funny.
Where we inspire you so you can #resist.
Subscribe and get a new episode of the Final Word podcast each week. It's the news we think you need to hear.
That's right. We think you need to hear it. Okay?
Yeah, it's what we say so.
That's right. And because all we do is give, every Thursday you can listen to our hysterical podcast, Idiot of the Week.
We round up the stupid because you know what? Somebody has to.
Okay. All we do is give. MSW Media.
Welcome to a very special edition of Feminist Buzzkills Live, aka we are at the March for Life. I'm Lizz Winstead with my co-hosts Moji Alawode-el and Marie Khan. Now, if you're new to the show, this is normally not our regular scheduled time slot. We're usually on, drop new episodes right here Thursdays at 4 p.m. But today is a special day for anti-extremists.
It is a holy day for anti-abortion extremists. We call this, this is a day where they worship the ghost of the anti-abortion future. And for the next 2 hours, we'll bring coverage, analysis, and we'll be shouting, "Drink!" every single time they shriek baby parts.
But before all of that, we of course need to bring you the latest news of where the BS is popping around the country to illustrate how the flourishing of these horrifying labors are coming true.
And yeah, these fruits are growing. In Florida, just this week, a judge denied a minor a judicial bypass because of her 2.0 GPA and some grammatical issues with her legal documents. Just so you know, a judicial bypass is something that minors in some states have to get to have an abortion, and they either can get a judicial bypass or they need their parents' permission. But a lot of times children, basically minors, may not have good relationships with their parents, or they're not safe talking about these things with their parents, and so they have to go to a judge. So I read it, and basically she'd used the wrong two. She wrote a don't instead of a doesn't. And this minor works 20 hours a week, pays for her own clothes, had $1,600 in savings. When I was 17, I did not have $1,600 in savings. Unfortunately, the denial was reversed, but this poor minor had to have multiple judge visits before being able to go forward with her healthcare choices. And the clinic wouldn't even talk to her until she got the judicial bypass. So she couldn't even get additional information she wanted. And this is really terrifying because judicial bypasses, they really penalize the most vulnerable minors, right? If you can't talk to your parents about abortion, like how terrible must your home situation be? And how will pregnancy improve that? I don't get it.
No,
and that's exactly
story of the week.
No, it's not. No, Marie's got some worse crap for us.
Yeah. I want you to imagine to being a young person, a minor in South Dakota. Well, South Dakota has told everybody, regardless of their age, we are going to make it even harder for you to access the abortion pill. They have gutted your ability to get this pill in a 4-2 vote last week, and it's going to be finalized and put in place at the end of this month, at the end of January. If you're 10 weeks or pregnant or less, you want to get a safe, legal abortion. Now you have to not only visit a fake clinic for an informed consent visit, which was part of the process, and visit your regular clinic and wait 72 hours. You're now obligated to come for 2 visits to take the abortion pill regimen itself. And then you have a obligatory mandated 2-week follow-up appointment after your abortion process has completed for you to get care and check up for your provider. Now, first off, if you need to go back to your provider, you can go back to your provider. You do not need to wait 2 weeks. You can call them. There are hotlines. Clinics are staffed after hours. People utilize that when they need to. If you don't need to go back, you're not going to. But now you're in violation of a new state law. So this is just an example of the bullshit upon bullshit that a state governor and their legislative entities are approving to limit the ability for abortion access for folks in a state that has not a lot of rural medicine resources to begin with. A state, I mean, Liz, right next to y'all in Minnesota, like Minnesota, fortunately, ends up being a saving grace for folks having to travel from the Dakotas to come over. Because where else are you going to go? You're going to try to go to Colorado, maybe. But oftentimes, Minnesota ends up being the option for individuals. And this type of law only forces more people to do that.
I love that they took something that the federal government said you could do by mail and made it a 4-part visit.
Yeah, they're like, oh, this is legally accepted telemedicine. Yeah, we're going to make you come 4 times, including one of those visits to a fake clinic to get informed consent information.
I know. It's why. I mean, think if they delivered your mail that way. Think if they first delivered the envelope, then the first page of your bank statement, then the second page of your bank statement, and the third. Like, what are you doing? But so I'm going to jump in and ice the shit cake of the week by saying that Mississippi gonna Mississippi. And not only has Mississippi brought this 15-week ban that's more than likely going to overturn Roe v. Wade as we know it, they've now proposed a law that takes us back to pre-Roe v. Wade statutes where basically any person who willfully causes an abortion shall be guilty of a felony. And to clarify, that should be unlawful for any physician to perform an abortion or to perform an abortion that results in the delivery of a child, which is the opposite of an abortion. I'm just saying. Also, they're going to increase the penalties for a person who advertises for any kind of medication abortion or anything that could be used in unlawful abortion. So basically, abortion funds, practical support funds, anybody that promotes how they can help someone get an abortion. Also, making sure that abortion coverage by any qualified healthcare plan through the state of Mississippi will not be available at all. And any person who knowingly uses the abortion pill or any abortion-inducing drugs will be guilty of a felony. So basically, they're going to start prosecuting people for miscarriages. So on top of everything else, Mississippi is just doing extra this week, and all of this happened this week. The Mississippi law was proposed yesterday as we are looking at this horrible situation that we're in with the March for Life going to Washington. And let's, for those of you who are like, what the hell is the March for Life even? Their shenanigans are going to start in a little while. You see this pre-coverage of this guy, but let's give folks a little bit of a overview of March for Life, who they are, what they do, how long they've been around and stuff. Moji, you want us to kick off with like just a little info?
Yeah, no, the March for Life, it's really fun. This is currently definitely a super spreader event that happens every year around the anniversary of Roe. They're individual state marches, but the largest one takes place in Washington, D.C. It's taking place right now in Washington, D.C. And religious schools and institutions will like offer students time off or credit for attending the march. But they don't just march at this march, right? Like that's what you see right now. That's what the video coverage of. But they have a bunch of ancillary events. They have a gala dinner that happens tonight. They've historically had anti-choice film premieres. They've had an expo that fortunately they canceled because, I don't know, we're in a pandemic. I'm like, what did you get there? Like essential oil with a fetus pic on it? I don't know. Anyway, it's fundamentally a show of force for the the anti-choice movement, anti-abortion movement. And again, like I said before, this is unfortunately the largest annual event to commemorate Roe, period. And it's done by antis with a goal of ending Roe. It sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. And they have a lot of partners in all of this. And Marie, like, talk a little bit about what it is that these folks are actually looking at beyond this party.
Yes. So the history behind the March for Life is that it came about when Roe v. Wade passed. And the first year, the goal was to meet it's always been in Washington, D.C., to meet in this geographic congressional context, because the whole goal behind the March for Life is to convince politicians on all levels to use political power to not only reverse Roe v. Wade, but also make abortion inaccessible across the country in other measures. Like they're not content with certain states having rights and providing provisions to those within those states. So this isn't a community that's saying states' rights, let your state decide what they want. They want all states to not have access to abortion care. So this march started when Roe was passed, and it's continued every year. And their plan is to end when Roe is overturned. And they based in Washington, D.C., but throughout the year, there's also smaller satellite marches, or as Moji has referred to them as parades without candy or floats, and a lot of white supremacists.
There's also... Go ahead. Go on, Marie.
And through these networks, they are in close ties with lots of, as Moji mentioned, young folks within communities, folks at churches, and we got some great great coverage coming in here. So they are a big force that mobilizes young people, gets them there. But in addition to that, their goals are to end abortion in America.
Yeah, and they have a bunch of wackadoos you've never heard of. Like, seriously, like people who if you're watching this, probably never even thought of it, but they have people with huge followings, right? Rage-filled priests, creepy lobbyists, talk radio celebrities, right-wing politicians just crawling out of the swamp. Just they've had famous people who you have heard of, right? Like the Ben Shapiro's, Mike Pence, Abby Johnson, Rick Santorum. You may not have heard of Abby Johnson. Ronald Reagan, I think Trump actually a couple of years ago. And then, like Marie said, all kinds of white supremacists. So many white people and their white supremacist cousins, like tens of thousands of them. And nuns. You see so many nuns. So nuns, white supremacists, kids, just people with a lot of experience with unplanned pregnancies show up and take over.
Yes, Moji. And we want folks to watch today. We need folks to watch today because we all need to be aware of this stigmatization that this community, with the church's blessing, not just the Roman Catholic Church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod also endorses. They're one of the proud sponsors to the Rose Dinner. So we want people to realize that this event is happening unchallenged every year. Progressive people to pay no attention to it. And as we can see, the numbers are swelling on the sides of those that are against abortion. You might have never heard of these people, but they are influential thought leaders for huge swaths of the country's opinions. And our side doesn't know these conservative media figures or the kind of messages they are resonating with the folks who listen to them. We laugh because we know Kirk Cameron from Growing Pains, and finding out, and you'll find out more, he's one of the speakers, Duck Dynasty as well. Him and his wife are the headliners. But the attendees that are watching this are actually super psyched. We're the ones out of the loop. And these are the motivating figures in their life that are telling them, don't support access to abortion, and a myriad of other intersectional hate-filled views that they have. So that's why they're kind of winning the war right now.
I think that's the most important part, Marie, is that if Kirk Cameron and the Duck Dynasty cast are the people that they're turning to for like influence, like taking their messaging in, and they'll go do their bidding, like that's a problem for all of us, because Ben Shapiro, he's also somebody who is a right-wing hero. He's the most influential person in the anti-abortion movement. This teeny tiny man, who speaks about abortion. And I think that's our side's problem all the time. They have their own media. They have their own influencers who are very rich, very powerful, and bringing people together in ways that are really scary. In fact, normally we would be on the ground if it wasn't COVID time, countering their messaging, doing big displays of events. And one of the people in their movement who is incredibly influential is a guy named Brian Kemper, who is the youth director for an organization called Priests for Life. And one of the strategies that they use is that they will, whether they're outside of a clinic or whether they're in your presence, they will assault you and then claim you assaulted them, and then create an entire drama around it, sometimes call in law enforcement. We were at a clinic in Raleigh, North Carolina, where one of the protesters kept rubbing his penis into one of us who were defending the escorts. And when we called the cops, he was like, she keeps assaulting me. And we were all like, no, officer, he's assaulting us. And he said, well, it's a he said, she said. And we're like, no. So Brian Kemper pulled a stunt when we were at the March for Life 2 years ago protesting. We were trying to block their speakers peacefully protesting, and he made a big stink that he was being sexually assaulted by our people, and was like, did anybody film it? Well, turns out we did, from 3 different angles. And so I want to show you, we made a video about him and his BS, and you can see for yourselves his victimization and how he tried to blame us and create this fake drama. So let's roll that video.
What you own is a concentration camp, a modern day Auschwitz that's tearing innocent baby boys and girls to pieces. What you are doing is the same thing that Adolf Hitler did. You are taking human beings into that building and ripping them limb from limb.
This dude's pushing me right now. We have 3 photographers filming it.
With their signs, I regret my abortion, and I regret my fatherhood.
Get off
The
me.
March for Life, in which, for the first time in American history, the President of the United States has been here. The police are coming.
Good.
The saving grace of Jesus Christ.
I was sitting here first.
I mean, this is like, first of all, shout out to InfoWars for giving us footage. Like, that's the worst I never thought I would say in my life. They didn't give us footage. They just happened to shoot this angle of him, and probably not knowing he was going to make this false claim. But this kind of behavior also, like when he posted that on Twitter, all the leadership, Abby Johnson, who is like a person who used to work at a Planned Parenthood and now just makes a living as an anti-abortion grifter, lying about her time there when she was actually fired for being incompetent. But so all of these people were in the Twitter feed. They raise money off of it. This is behavior they celebrate. And this isn't a fringe person. I really need to emphasize this. This is a person who works for Priests for Life, which is a major organization that has been present and prevalent throughout this whole 3-day festival of just like extremism. And so like, we just wanted to give you a little taste on like, when we talk about rock stars, like this guy, Brian Kemper, is so influential within the youth movement and gets all these people, he's like, I used to be a drug addict. And he's now says pro-life is the new punk rock. And I'm like, bitch, you need to learn about punk rock, because no, there's nobody who's like, what's really punk rock? Oppressing everyone and really making sure that you're taking celibacy vows. Like everyone thinks like, you know what? I love that Minor Threat song about not fucking. And not
Liz, this material, this illustrates the type of bullying, especially by men, that is so orchestrated and common. It occurs throughout the year. I mean, like you said, there were a couple of cameras on this, thankfully, to get more information and corroborating information too. But they know these types of tactics are going to garner them more in donations and physical volunteers, because they're showing up, they're putting themselves out there with a presence. And later in the broadcast, we're going to talk to Kristen Haiti, a clinic escort coordinator from the Toledo, Ohio Women's Center, to talk about the tactics and what those of us can do to combat and respond to these.
Yeah.
But Liz, it scares me that people like Brian Kemper are protected. They have a presence and a following. Like he had a priest up there next to him the whole time.
Yep, egging him on and really supporting everything he was doing.
Well, and that's Father Frank Pavone. And this is a priest who sketchily did a YouTube video with an actual human fetus on an altar, which if you want to just, if you are daring and want to learn more about Frank Pavone, you can just watch that YouTube video and just Google Frank Pavone. He is this outlier in the Catholic Church. And I just want to say too that like there's 50,000 people in Washington, D.C. for this march. The event started yesterday. In fact, this is maddening. A group of extremists invaded a clinic, literally did a clinic invasion. They're called the Red Rose Movement. They invaded a clinic, terrorized the staff and the patients there. And on the same day, Newsweek printed a op-ed from them. Like, this both sidesism is really scary. I don't think the media in any way, shape, or form understands who they are and how influential they are. And I think right now, if y'all don't mind, would be a really good time to bring on Robin Marty, who is an incredible historian. I call her the Doris Kearns Goodwin of abortion history. And Robin is going to, I'd love for Robin to come on. I'm going to pop off. But Moji and Marie, I really want Robin to come on and talk about the organizations who are intersecting with them and really supporting them, like the Susan B. Anthony list and like their sister organization, the Charlotte Lozier Group, and kind of how they get legislation and what their role is here. So I'm going to pop off and we're going to bring on Robin to just talk a little bit about that.
Awesome.
It's going to be a minute. It takes a second to do all the switching around.
We can all
these things are
admire
instantaneous.
your decolletage right now, Moji. No one corroborated on the colors we were wearing, and I like that we're all very complimentary to each other. If we were in DC, the hand warmers we'd all be going through.
The hand warmers we would need, but it's good that we're home. Hey, Robin.
Hey.
Thanks
for having me on, y'all.
Oh, we love having you around. So I think you heard everything we said. What did we miss in our overview?
So one of the things that I really like to make people understand is the fact that everybody that is out there right now already existed back in the days of like the bad 90s, before the FACE Act existed and when people were actually physically blocking and invading clinics. One of the things that people aren't terribly aware of is the fact that originally all of these groups that you're seeing right now, so Brian Kemper in his little Youth for Life, Frank Pavone, all of these people actually are Operation Rescue. Back in the 80s, when Operation Rescue existed, it became a network that had people in every single state. And once the lawsuit happened that accused them of coordinating and doing all what they were doing to try and stop abortion and make clinics close, they all broke up and they started naming themselves other different organizations in order to try and get out of the lawsuits and make sure that people didn't notice how coordinated they still were. So Brian Kemper is now the Priest for Life Youth Outreach Director, but Brian Kemper of the 90s was Operation Rescue Youth Outreach Director. He just moved to a different organization in order to make it look like they were separate. Same with Frank Pavone. Frank Pavone was one of the religious outreach coordinators for Operation Rescue. Like, all of these people that we see now were originally Operation Rescue members. They were raised in it. They were groomed by them, and now they're off on their own. And so we're watching this again at our clinics, where Operation Rescue itself had to change its name to Operation Save America, and now they are grooming yet another batch of people who are showing up at our clinics screaming at us and trying to stop people from being able to access a legal abortion.
Yeah. Who's this dude?
Who's which dude? Oh, yeah. So many dudes.
There was a priest up there. Oh, it's a bunch of them.
Oh, yeah. See, there's a ton of I don't know, because of the what is that?
It looks like Greek Orthodox, maybe?
I'm not sure. One of the things that's really interesting about, I say interesting with air quotes, obviously, interesting about the priest movement of the Anti-Abortion League is that we always used to say that, you know, all of these people are religious, they're separated from politics. But that all changed in 2016 when everybody jumped on the Trump train. And right. So if you go and you look up Frank Pavone right now, the first thing you would see on his Facebook page is him in a MAGA hat. talking about how important, even with Trump out of office, it is to carry on the legacy. And they were literally having a Trump rally while they were there because Trump is the most pro-life president they've ever had. Trump changed the courts for them. Trump paved the way so that they can actually overturn Roe. Trump did all of this for them. And so we're seeing the very extremist of the anti-abortion movement and even the more mainstream. The Susan B. Anthony list is backing Trump-like candidates. Anti-abortion is now politics. And when the March for Life started, giving people the benefit of the doubt and seeing best intentions has always been my weakness. When the March for Life started, the March for Life did not start as a political organization, as in an election and a campaign organization. But now everything is so tied together. Even March for Life itself had to start a C4 so that they could continue to do their election work. This is not your 1970s anti-abortion movement, and every decade they become stronger, but every decade they also become more ruthless, and that terrifies me.
I feel like the ruthlessness we see, right? Like they went down to DC and just immediately invaded a clinic. And you see it. I feel like we hear about it all the time, that the clinic violence is increasing. The attacks are increasing. It's not stopping. And they're winning. So it's like, why are you increasing this? You're winning. Why do you have to be an asshole about it?
They're doing it because they know that at this point, there are still going to be clinics. And so their job is to pick off the clinics that remain. But also they want people to be scared to go and get an abortion. That is the thing that is the most important to them. And quite frankly, I would say that for the most part, clinic protesters are no longer out there to try and talk to the people who are coming into the clinics. They're talking to the people who are in the clinics. I can tell you yesterday from my own experience that the people that were at our back door screaming at us, although they were telling the patients that they needed to stop themselves from murdering and getting rid of their babies, mostly they were talking at us. They were talking at the staff about, okay, you are going to go to hell. You are the ones who are destroying America. We have God's finger on us. Like, those are the sort of things that they're saying to us now. And as somebody who, like, 3-4 years ago was embedded with the anti-abortion movement, and now seeing like what it is like inside a clinic, like the entire perspective has shifted in a way that I honestly don't recommend for people, because I don't sleep well at night anymore.
Robin, I was hoping that you would mention that point too, that you're also you also are in operations at the West Alabama Women's Center. You're the operations director there. So we know that these are the orgs that you've seen throughout your life today at the March for Life, that in their little ecosystem, they're making headway in dismantling abortion access. What would you say are like the top 3 most toxic organizations that we've seen out there today and that we know are on the docket?
Susan B. Anthony list is by far the most dangerous group out there. I firmly believe that we would not have had Trump elected had it not been for their influence. And I believe that we are going to keep seeing that over and over again. The Susan B. Anthony list not only is recruiting candidates who essentially want a Christian theocracy, but they have become very good at using abortion as a way of moving people to the polls. They have figured out how to micro-target even in what looks like potentially pro-choice places in order to find voters who would not normally vote and who are usually Catholic and even in some cases progressive, and convince them one by one that they need to come out and vote in order to make sure that abortion becomes illegal. They have an operation that quite frankly terrifies me, and more money pours into there every year. They are the reason that America looks like it does right now, and that America has looked the way that it has changed and shifted ever since 2016. The second most dangerous group, I would say, is Alliance Defending Freedom. They have an endless supply of being able to simply give pro bono lawyers that can either actually do legal defense for anti-abortion activists or be able to continue they can defend against any sort of action that we as pro-abortion rights activists put out there. So, for instance, we currently at our clinic have a system set up that was approved by the city that allows anti-abortion people to be in our parking lot as long as they stay over in a certain corner of our parking lot. We know that right now we have to develop enough evidence to be able to overturn this, because the city, if we try to say these people can't be here anymore, hey, look at the stuff that they're knocking over, the shouting that they're doing next to the pediatrics clinic, all of these things, we are going to have to go and fight Alliance Defending Freedom, who is then going to come in and give them a pro bono lawyer and try to work forever to make sure that the legal case keeps going in an attempt to simply bankrupt the city. That's what we're up against. They are the ones who are, along with Federalist Society, grooming their lawyers who are going to be the next circuit judges, who are going to be the next Supreme Court justices. This is the legal side, and Susan B. Anthony List is the political side. And then you see March for Life is the activist side.
This machine is terrifying. This machine, and we see the evidence, right? Like, I feel like Texas hasn't had abortion for 4 months. Are we at 4 months yet? Functionally, like basically past 6 weeks for 4 months. And, who knows when it's going to come back. I feel like we just had a setback yesterday. Looks like, the rally's happening, and we'll see you back and forth through the time here, Robin. But what craziness do you expect to hear at the March for Life before we bring Lizz back?
Oh God, I can't even figure it out anymore. Every year it becomes more extreme, but you have to realize that March for Life, when you are doing the main stage March for Life, they know cameras are on them. They paint a completely different picture of themselves, because this is the point in which they try to prove that they are mainstream, they are gentle, they are pro-women, pro-child, all of these things that you aren't going to see, say, if you were at their big protest at Planned Parenthood yesterday, which is when they really bring out the extremism.
Terrifying. All right, Marty, thank you for now, and we'll see you soon.
Yep.
Bye.
Oh, that was so great. I'm so glad. This is, by the way, just for those of you watching the feed, this is Jean Mancini, who is speaking right now. She is the head of March for Life, the president of March for Life. And I think Robin's point that this is their public face, there wouldn't be as much extremism as we see unless because this shit ain't inspiring, right?
No.
Somebody fire and brimstoning you into thinking all of the language we hear when you see them outside of clinics. And we'll be talking with Kristen Haiti later on in the show, who runs a clinic escort program in Toledo, Ohio, at the clinic there, and how they have been victims of some of the programmatic work that they do outside of this march, and what that really means and what that looks like, and how March for Life activists show up every day, as opposed to how their leadership shows up in the world and tries to look all like, she's wearing an Hermes scarf. Like, I see your scarf, Jean Mancini. I like your scarf, but like your scarf, like holding up a neck full of hate. Like that is what is.
That's a perfectly reasonable blowout that holds a brain that is doing wild things.
That's right. And as Robin was talking about the Alliance for Defending Freedom, their general counsel is actually speaking later on. And I'm very excited that we're going to be bringing out the Boom Lawyered crew to really break down the work they do, because like Robin's generalized conversation around who they are is terrifying. But when we think about the details and who they are and what they've done, I think after we hear them speak and we deep dive in, it's going to be pretty scary. But like we were saying earlier, it's being there, and we have been there 3 years pre-COVID. When you see how they rally people, and the fact that they have convinced churches, and they're funded by some big organizations. The Knights of Columbus, is a big funder of their work. In fact, the Knights of Columbus, if you think it's just like some Catholic dad bod organization that gets together and does like, I don't know what, likes to wear white and kind of weird hoods for a reason. They have spent over $50 million buying ultrasound machines for fake clinics and for those fake vans. And so, there's some of the funders here, but and like small dollar donors, and look at these people. And I think the thing that's fascinating is they have roped churches into spending their own money, getting buses and bringing people down and getting busloads of people to protest outside of clinics. So they're really setting up programs and having this churches at their disposal to mobilize folks to go outside of clinics and be here. And think about what you're seeing here, these 50,000 people here. Divide that up by organizational people who show up outside of clinics. That's what we're dealing with. And so when you see 200, 300 people, 500 outside of a clinic on a Saturday, it's because they're getting their marching orders at this big party 3 days in a row. They're having meetings where they're learning to lobby. You know,
they're being inspired. They're getting new slogans. They're getting new chants. Toolkits. You know, they're getting new talking points. They're getting talking. Yeah.
You know,
they're really,
and that's the thing.
They're being set up to just go and take these tentacles out into the world and make it feel like a grassroots effort, which once one person leaves the March for Life and inspires their congregation or their community or their friends, that's what it feels like and looks like.
Yeah. And even let's bring up Jean Mancini for a minute. I don't know where she's at in her speech, but let's get a little taste of what the leadership of March for Life is. Look at these.
Probably pointing out all the places where there's anti-abortion legislation.
It's not turned yet, but he's very excited to meet you all. I can tell you that much. Yeah. Okay, look at the screen. And take a look just to see how far and wide you've traveled to be here with us today. This morning, I met an exchange student from Uzbekistan who came. I know 5 buses of you are from North Dakota. We've got people from all over the country and world. Nice. Once again, go ahead and text MARCH to 73075, and we'll see all the pin drops here on the map. We march today in defense of human rights and to celebrate the dignity and worth of every human life, because equality begins in the womb. Thank you,
Oh my
folks.
God.
So she doesn't even know what she's saying. Who's coming up next? I have no idea. Who are these people?
Have we even talked about that stupid statement, equality begins in the womb? I feel like this equality begins and ends in the womb.
I believe that is fair. All right, let's see who she's bringing up next, because it might be the one and only, or she's just hugging all the oppressors. Let's just see.
All right, coming up.
I was worried that she was going to say Uzbekistan was the city.
Leaders in the United States Congress who are standing.
All right, let's look at all these Congress people. Take a look, people. Let's just see who these people are who are standing on stage.
You know what?
At the ready, unmasked, pro-life.
Applauded for standing for life. So let's do that one more time. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge each of them for their bravery and their commitment to ensuring that equality begins in the womb. Joining me here today are U.S. Senator James Langford of Oklahoma, Congresswoman Michelle Fischbach of Minnesota, Congresswoman Diana Harshbarger of Tennessee, Congressman Dan Crenshaw of Texas, Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler of Missouri. This is wonderful. Congressman Matthew Rosendale of Montana. Congresswoman Mary Miller of Illinois. Congressman Barry Moore of Alabama. Congressman Andy Harris of Maryland. Congressman Warren Davidson of Ohio. Congressman Mike Johnson of Louisiana. Congressman Andrew Clyde of Georgia. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia.
Yikes.
Congressman Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania. Congressman Scott Franklin of Florida. Congresswoman Yvette Harrell of New Mexico. We are also joined by two people who I am so grateful to know, Congresswoman Julia Letlow of Louisiana and Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey. First up, we're going to have Congresswoman Julia Letlow, the first Republican woman elected to Congress from the state of Louisiana. A new and deep friend to the March for Life, Congresswoman.
Thank you. Who's ready to march for life? My name is Julia Letlow, and I'm honored to be here with all of you today as we collectively raise our voices in unity for those who deserve equal rights under the law, the unborn. Today, I can't help but reflect on the amazing experience of carrying my own first child and feeling for the first time those incredible flutters of life in my womb. I remember being filled with awe and wonder at the miracle growing inside of me while praying.
It's so lucky for you. Like, I'm like, yeah, yay for you.
I know. I mean, and this is when you, it's like when you listen to them, it's always like, this happened to me.
Yeah.
And therefore it's going to be everyone's experience. And to stand up there with Marjorie Taylor Greene and to literally let her on your stage, somebody who tried to overthrow the government, like she wants to just overthrow your womb, your government, everything about what's wrong. And I think we're going to make a list for you and a graphic of every single person on this stage, and we'll post it tomorrow if you're looking for a jumping off point of how and what you want to do to make some change. Maybe thinking about anti-abortion politicians who are in your state that maybe you didn't know, and trying to identify them, and having more pro-choice people elected. Look at
and
these
mobilize
people
against them. Like, tell your friends, like, oh yeah, no, woman, first woman congresswoman in 30 years sounds great, but then like she's spouting this, like, why?
Yeah, she wants to feel those baby kicks, all of you. No, thank you.
It's just like there's this assumption that everyone is as excited to be pregnant as she was, which I think is truly unfair and like really myopic. But I think she's also part of the party that believes that hates gay people until their children turned out gay. And then they're like, oh, I've evolved. And it's like, you've just had a personal experience. It's hard for you to just see other people's humanity if it doesn't look exactly like yours.
Yeah. And I also feel too, like, let this be an example. They have a 3-day event where they have drawn 50,000 people, up over 100,000 some years, to this event where they talk about destroying abortion. We have never had anybody come out and really understand. Our side does not understand how much they focus and single focus on abortion. And we need to combat it with abortion conversations and abortion rallies and a show of force that's public like this, that talks about abortion, centering the people who are affected the most, people of color, poor folks, who do these laws affect the most? But we cannot, as a movement, and have for its entirety, sketched around it, talked about other things, acted like, and part of it goes back to what we talked about earlier. We do not understand the profound importance and prioritization that abortion is within conservative movements. And unless we can go tit for tat on having a rally that's about abortion and about why we support abortion and what it means, and talking about abortion all the time, and having elected officials on a stage who say, yeah, this is what we're doing, we are not going to win. We need to show them that we have the numbers on abortion and on this issue specific.
Well, they own, or they've captured the narrative around shaming and stigmatizing abortion. Because let's be honest, you can look at that crowd. People in that crowd have had abortions, right? Conservative people have abortions. Anti-abortion people have abortions. People have abortions, but they own the stigma around it and the shame around it. And I think they only own it in the context of, I did this and now I regret it, and you will too. So I'm going to stop your options and choices. When we know most people do not regret their abortions.
I want to bring Chris Smith's audio up because he often is somebody who is part of that stigmatizing language and getting people influenced. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, absolutely.
To aggressively promote abortion on demand at home and overseas, including the full court press.
Yes, let's promote it.
To fund abortion on demand. Last September, the House of Representatives passed the Abortion on Demand Until Birth Act that not only legalizes late-term abortions, but would nullify every pro-life, modest restriction ever enacted. So we have challenges. And you know, all of you have worked on this, and some in our midst now as members did this as state legislators. This includes women's right to know laws in 35 states, parental involvement statutes in 37 states, pain-capable unborn child protection laws in 19 states, waiting periods in 26 states, sex selection abortion bans in 11 states, and of course funding, which they want to compel and coerce us to pay for abortions. For decades, my friends,
yes, we do,
and I know you know this,
we do.
Right up to this very moment, abortion supporters defend the indefensible with stolid resolve, which begs the question, why does dismembering a child with sharp knives, pulverizing a child with powerful suction devices, or chemically poisoning a baby with any number of toxic chemicals fails to elicit so much as a scintilla of empathy or compassion from the so-called pro-choice crowd?
All right, let's
Medical
take him
research,
down.
as you all know,
He literally just proved my whole point.
That's it, Moji. That's why I didn't mean to cut you off, but I knew that he was going to introduce a bunch of rhetoric that is just outright lies, just about the procedure itself. Knives, you know, important suction devices. You mean the same suctions that we use to clean out a uterus after a miscarriage? Like simple tools that we use so that we don't get sepsis when we are trying to remove products of conception. But like for him to say this, and this is the whole thing, is that if we don't combat these things all the time, and if we don't say everything he's saying that's damaging and terrible about what we want is simply a universal space and option for us to have the choices for a full medical access, right? And so that's why it's so incredible to watch them over and over again be able to just say shit that is that sounds horrible. You know, he's proud that they have laws on the books that doctors have to lie to patients, and they call it a Woman's Right to Know Act.
Yeah,
he's proud about waiting periods.
He was proud of all these incredibly harmful laws that, like, if you pay any attention, if you actually look at the science around these kind of laws are incredibly harmful. You know, Marie, at the top of this, it outlined a law where basically people have to go 4 times to get a procedure that the federal government said you could just have mailed to your house in the middle of a global pandemic that's been raging for 3 years. And he's like, modest restrictions. There's nothing modest about that. There's nothing reasonable about that.
And that is the whole thing. That is the whole thing about it. Go ahead, Marie.
He's an example of a politician who's also like he fully much goes back and votes the way he talks. He's voted against legislation that would allow veterans to get free contraception. He's very much in favor of personhood, which we've discussed at length, and how this is part of what dismantling Roe looks like. To accept this idea that a chemical that chemicals, quote unquote, are being introduced into a pregnancy when it's an abortion pill being taken orally. This is someone who also came up with the term forcible rape, because he thinks there's shades of gray in rape, and only certain people that are raped deserve, quote unquote, access to an abortion. So this, again, though, he is turning around and using in the legislation that he votes for and that he votes against.
That's right, Marie. And I think that in each of the examples that he was talking about, he changed the name of the bill or tried to make it sound like either reasonable or combating a thing that's not happening. And we at Abortion Access Front, and we will on Feminist Buzzkills Live reiterate and talk about these things a lot. But when you talk about things like the Born Alive Protection Act, it's they create a law that acts like that's happening and say we have to put a stop to it. And that's kind of their MO, right? It's like, hey, let's make up a horrible thing and just repeat it over and over again that it's happening, and then create a law to stop it from happening, that the law's only purpose really is to like put up a roadblock to like an actual thing that's happening. And then when the thing we made up stops happening based on the law we made because it was never happening to begin with, our lemmings think we stopped a thing from happening because we made a law, and then they just come up with a new law.
Yeah.
So that's crazy, but like it's exactly what they do. Yeah. And so,
that I would like to also, like we talked last week on Feminist Buzzkills Live about, again, there's a hospitals are overcrowded right now in the DC area. There is COVID is rampant. The DC public health has increased COVID restrictions that they put in place a couple of weeks ago. And yet here are all these folks standing ass to ass, singing and listening to this whole litany of, we saw the elected officials. I don't know. Like, I wouldn't want to really do that in normal times now anymore. And especially now, just how irresponsible can you be?
Yep. And how is that pro-life?
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly. And how is that pro-life? And I feel like that's why I don't understand why they get credit. We're in a pandemic. Washington, D.C. was begging people to please don't come. Their health department and their hospitals were like, we're overtaxed. This is terrifying. And what the hell? No masks. Most of these people are anti-vax. We're watching their chatter online. It's like, we can't go to any restaurants because we're not vaxxed. They had to close down their like expo because you were required to show your vaccination card. So they're like, well, we're not going to have it because most of you aren't vaccinated. And then you have the balls to say you're pro-life. And then you have the balls to thematically call your thing equity begins in the womb. I mean, it is just too much. I don't know who this speaker is, but do you want to have a listen? Let's pull her up.
Let's see what Tony's talking about.
I think it's Tony, one of the...
Oh, this is
Tony McFadden.
That I've been given the opportunity to share my story with you on such an historical day. There was a time in my life that I believed my life was more valuable than my unborn baby. My senior year in high school, I selfishly ended the life of my child. I believed the lie that if I aborted my child, my boyfriend would stay with me, my parents would never find out about my secret, and my life would go along as planned. And the abortion facility led me to believe the same. I was 7 weeks along. During my ultrasound, I was told that my baby was nothing, just the size of a pea. I was sent home with the chemical abortion pills, which ended up not working, causing me to experience severe hemorrhaging unexpectedly while I was in school. This was a month after taking those pills. This is the reality of abortion. It only destroys. My boyfriend walked out of my life without warning. My life began to unravel at the seams. This is what the abortion industry calls freedom. The greatest regret of my life was ending the life of my child. I believe all lives matter.
Yeesh.
And those who advocate for Black lives to matter and demand equal rights for Black men and women, that needs to start in the womb. because we know the very act of abortion is wiping us out. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, it is not possible to be in favor of justice for some people and not in favor for justice for all people, and that includes preborn babies. I am so thankful that we have a God who redeems. And he can take the pain and the mistakes of our past and make something absolutely beautiful out of it. The boyfriend that broke up with me, he came back to me almost 9 years later to apologize to me. And less than a year later, this happened. We were able to honor our unborn baby at our wedding by lighting an extra candle to honor their life. And then God blessed us with more beautiful children, 3 who I have with me today. Aww. This is a picture of redemption. We are on the right side of history in this battle. I needed all of you then, and these babies still need you now. And we will not stop until abortion is made illegal and unthinkable. Thank you.
Oh my God. Hi, joining us is Dr. Monica McLemore, who is a nurse, who is an RJ activist, who is a researcher. And Monica, I was so wanting you to come on and talk, especially this abortion regret narrative that they have been so successful at throwing out there into the world, right? And with, I mean, regret is regret. Like, I'm sorry, like, not to be callous and cold, but we regret things every day. We could not wake up every day and live in a civilized society if we legislated all regret. Having said that, Monica, there was a massive research paper done and a book that turned
not just a paper, a book
turned into called the Turnaway Study that talks about what happens to folks when they can't access abortion. Can you talk to us a little bit about that to counter this narrative?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me on today. And I'm just so grateful for that you're doing this. You know, for people who know me, they know that I just love period pieces and period films. And one of my favorite is Dangerous Liaisons. And one of the things that the Marquise de Mertois always says is that regret is an essential component to happiness. And for us to think that we can live human lives without regret, I think is extremely naive. And that, you know, her capacity, the previous speaker's capacity to have the family and the life that she has now was predicated upon the fact that she was able to have that abortion and move forward with her life. And so the Turnaway Study talks about that contextual importance of the public good of abortion and how people who have abortions have been misrepresented in the media. They've been misrepresented in the conversation. Many of them have been left out. So for people who are watching who don't know the incredible Turnaway Study that was conducted by Diana Green Foster, a colleague of mine who is the Associate Director of Research at Advancing New Standards in Reproductive Health, or the ANSWER program, where I'm a scientist. This was a study that finally matched scientifically an appropriate control group of people who were seeking abortions and were either able to receive them at whatever gestational limit was available in the states that where abortion was legal in the state up to whatever gestational age. And they compared those individuals to people who were denied abortions. They were either, sometime past the gestational limit of that particular state. And they followed these people over time. And why that matters is a lot of people think that if you compare folks who have pregnancies that continue on to term to people who've had abortions, that is a direct comparison control group. And it's not, because abortion is not a pregnancy decision, it's a parenting decision. And so what happened in the Turnaway Study, they got almost 1,000 individuals that they followed over time. About half had the abortions that they saw, half carried those pregnancies to term because they were turned away from abortion clinics. And what they found at the end of that study, both quantitatively and qualitatively, is that the people who were not able to access the abortion that they wanted were poorer at as parents, that their personal health conditions had exacerbated, such that if they had diabetes or hypertension or other kinds of comorbidities, that those were exacerbated, that their children were more likely to be poor or poorer. And the thing that's so important about the Turnaway study is a couple of different things. It debunked a lot of myths about who actually has abortions in the United States. I believe, it is a study where the statistics teach us a lot of very important lessons. Like, the majority of people who have abortions are already parents. The story that we just heard, we can assume that was her first pregnancy, right? But we know statistically that the majority of people who have abortions are already parents. We also learned that the majority of people who have abortions not only are already parents, but they have desires to maybe become parents in the future when they are in a better situation or circumstance. The other thing the Turnaway study taught us is that, like, pregnant people and their lives they're complicated, right? And that these decisions, despite the fact that people were poor, having to continue pregnancies to term that they wanted to end, and were not able to access a wanted abortion, people were resilient. They were able to, find a way to take care of their children. They were able to figure it out. They were very clear they didn't have all the social supports that they wanted and they needed in order to be successful in becoming parents. There were no mental health consequences in either group. And quite frankly, what we found is, over time, the people who were able to access abortion were actually far more content in their lives in terms of having had achieved their educational goals, their relationship goals, and they were, much more likely to report being satisfied and happy with it.
And Monica, we're going to wrap up on this because Dan Lipinski's on. But one thing I just also wanted to say before we go, listen to Dan Lipinski, but we're going to bring you back later. And that is, she was with a partner who was a mess, and it took him 9 years to come back to her. So had she had a family with that person, who knows what that would have been like, So like leaving out these really important parts of the story to me just seems so wild. Okay. So we're going to take Dan Lipinski and talk to him, and then we're going to be back to you as we see an RN coming on and some other things. Thank you, Monica, so much for that insight. It was incredible.
Yeah, I'll see you in a bit.
All babies and their mothers are protected. Thank you for being here. God bless.
All right.
Good old Dan Lipinski. But we're going to just stop for a second because we got the Boom Lawyered folks here. And Dan Lipinski, y'all, is somebody who is a politician who is no more. Because, and it gave me hope because in the state of Illinois, he had a D next to his name. And I think that people are just voting for Big D. And then when they realize, oh, he's an anti-abortion extremist. Okay, that came out wrong. But like, he was reversed. Can you all talk from just like legislative perspective when it comes to someone like Dan Lipinski, who was a roadblock for Obamacare and was all this stuff, like the importance of and how folks can find out who these, don't just trust Democrats. I guess talk to me about don't just trust Democrats.
Okay. Yeah. So don't just trust Democrats. Dan Lipinski is probably the greatest example of this. And I'm so glad you brought up the Affordable Care Act because we can go back that far and still feel the implications today. There was a huge fight over the Affordable Care Act as to whether or not if you were going to get coverage, your insurance would cover your abortion. or even hell, your birth control. And it was Democrats like Dan Lipinski who were pushing the charge for less and less benefits. So not even like, do you believe somebody should be able to access abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy? Quite frankly, do you think it should just be a bigger pain in the butt and more expensive? And these are the folks who are supposedly pushing social safety programs, right? Who are supposedly voting in pro-family ways with progressives for things like family leave and whatnot. But when you look at their voting records, I'm going to let you know it is unsurprising that in addition to opposing abortion, the Dan Lipinskis of the world also do things like oppose family leave, oppose minimum wage hikes, oppose, Medicaid expansion, anything that could actually put the meat on the bones of their pro-family nonsense. They also block legislatively.
Right. I mean, and I think that's a really good point to hit because, oh my God, who is this person? I believe that it's the Duck Dynasty wife. Let's bring up the Duck Dynasty wife for a minute and bring Danielle on to watch the Duck Dynasty wife. She's married to the Duck Dynasty, like the lesser Duck Dynasty person. I'm going to pop out. Let's bring Danielle on and watch her live.
My family, my children that I carried and birthed, it did cost me 2 children and generations of grandchildren. But God, God rescued me, He forgave me, He redeemed me, and He also gave me a voice to speak out for the unborn. He gave me a voice to speak the truth and not lies. As the body of Christ, we need to be pro-love and pro-life in a pro-hate and a pro-choice world. We can't sit back any longer and allow our future generations to be aborted. We must act now. We are closer than ever to reversing Roe versus Wade and bringing life, the importance of every life, and the sanctity of life back to the hearts and minds of America. There is a mission field out there right outside your front door. It's in your own family. It's in your church. It's in your community and in your youth groups. We are not in a bubble. It's happening right beside us. It's in the diners and the restaurants that we frequent. It's in our hair and nail salons, in the grocery stores and shopping malls, and in those little boutiques that we like to shop in. Everywhere you look, young women are making decisions and because of the lies that they hear. We have to be pro-adoption as well. When Roe versus Wade is overturned, we will need families to adopt the children that are saved. Decide today, right here in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, that you will take up this fight for the life of the unborn and the countless women who will suffer, as I have, because of their decisions. I am blessed to be here with you to be a part of the pro-life movement. Now pick up your cross, the cause of Christ, and speak truth, speak life, speak love, and speak Jesus. Thank you.
Are you guys ready? Good afternoon.
Let's listen. Hi, Danielle. Let's listen to Katie, and then we'll come back to Danielle.
Katie Shaw from Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm a born and raised Hoosier. I am 36 years old, and I have Down syndrome. I am happy to be here today in the fight for the dignity of human life for all unborn babies diagnosed with a disability or not. I believe equality for you, me, and everyone started in the womb. It started the day of conception when God gave us our soul. I am proud to be here to march to show the world that people with a disability or not need to have the chance to show the world God's plan for them. They need a chance to live their wonderful life outside the womb. My parents found out I had serious medical issues and Down syndrome when my mom was 5 months pregnant with me. My parents never thought about aborting me. They worked and planned with the doctors to help me have my wonderful life. Now, here I am, 36 years later, contributing to society, working full-time, enjoying family, friends, playing sports, and participating in a book club. And speaking out with you for the unborn. I even got to speak to our past pro-life president, President Trump, at the White House. As you can see, my equal life that started in the womb was meant to be. Many people don't know that there's a waiting list for babies with Down syndrome to be adopted, and yet over 80% of babies with Down syndrome are not given the chance to be adopted.
Adoption isn't a replacement
and their equality
for anything.
It makes me very
Can't hear
sad to think of all the friends I have that I might have lost if their parents did not believe equality starts in the womb. It makes me sadder to think of friends I miss because they were aborted. Friends, you and I have been given the chance to fight for equality in the womb. And by working together, we can make the difference in the world.
So can we bring her down? I feel like what I hate about things like this is that it's similar to the previous woman that feel like they trot out people to sort of prove their case, like, oh, reason bands make sense when they don't.
She's happy that she can be part of a book club. And it's like, you don't have to be pro-life to be in a book club. Just saying. I mean,
Danielle.
Oh, I mean, it's true.
I mean, it's wild because it's like, I'm so happy that your parents made the decision that they had the capacity to raise a child with Down syndrome. That is amazing. But also, this idea that like everyone needs to make that choice is wild.
The assertion that
Imani and Jessica, I can't hear you guys. Are you guys there?
We're here.
We're here. Oh, okay.
I just didn't want to interrupt. But, I mean,
you have a lot to say.
I have a lot to say. As a Black
Black woman who was adopted at the age of 3 months. You know, I just found out recently, my mom is white and Jewish, my dad is Black and Catholic. Holidays were very confusing at my house. But but I just found out, my mom was just, you know, showing me family pictures and talking about what it was like when she adopted me, because I've been actually thinking about adopting. I can't believe I just said that on stream. You know, so I was asking her questions about it. And she said that, you know, when adopting me, she had a choice of a dark-skinned baby. And I'm not even that dark-skinned, but a dark-skinned baby and like a much lighter-skinned baby. And they chose me because they know that dark-skinned Black children don't get adopted as much. That's just a fact. There are kids wallowing in foster care systems. Texas, for example, since we're talking about Texas a lot, there was a federal judge that found that people who age out of foster care in Texas have similar rates of PTSD as war veterans, as combat veterans. So these are states that are expecting to have this huge influx of new children. What are they going to do with them? Right? I mean, you hear these people cheering at the March for Life about adoption. Woo! And then this woman, I can't remember what her name is, but this woman with Downs who just spoke, then she says, you know, 80% of kids with Down syndrome aren't getting adopted. And then there's silence among the crowd. And I'm looking at this woman thinking, why do you think that is?
Yeah,
it's because these people who are sitting in this crowd talking about how they're going to adopt all the babies, all the snowflake babies, which are the babies, you know, the excess embryos that aren't fertilized, and all the Black babies and the brown babies, Latinx babies and the Down syndrome babies. They're not adopting anybody because they don't want to raise a person with Down syndrome. They don't want to raise a Black baby. And when they do, and when these conservatives do raise Black children, you end up with people like Amy Coney Barrett. The way she talks about her Black children, so distressing to me. So when you talk about adoption as an alternative to abortion, I find that personally offensive. And I'm a person who had a beautiful adoptive experience. Despite that, I still have abandonment issues. So it's not like people who get adopted are just like, woo! I mean, there are so many people who actually are dedicated to explaining how harmful adoption can be, how harmful specifically transracial adoption can be. I'm lucky my mom is woke as fuck. But like there are a lot of white people who are adopting Black children who are divesting them from their own culture and their own heritage. Not teaching them what it means to be Black, not teaching them how to interact with Black police. Abby Johnson, for example, right,
who is terrible and who says terrible things. Hold on. Kirk Cameron is on stage and he's the headliner. So we want to hear his bullshit for a second if everybody
Oh my God, I can't believe he's the headliner.
You had. And some of you wouldn't even be here if it weren't for a movie called Fireproof. Ask your parents, they'll tell you the whole story. Why are we here? The Bible, the book that built America, says that those who hate God love death. But we're the family of faith. We love God, therefore we love life. And our hope is not in the White House. It's not in Congress. Our hope is not in the people who govern us or the laws that we make in this nation. Our hope is in the power of God working in the hearts of his people. And this issue of life is very personal for me. My wife is an adopted child. Okay. Chelsea was one doctor appointment away from not existing. Our first 4 children are also adopted. They were this close to not being here. And if my wife Chelsea had not been born, our 2 natural-born children would not exist either. So my 6 children and my wife are here as a result of loving, compassionate, and courageous people like you who are marching today at the March for Life. I hope that you have a chance later this year to see the movie Life Mark that is based on a true story. It is a story that is so much better than anything we ever could have scripted. But the makers of Fireproof and Courageous and War Room and I have teamed up to bring this film that highlights the value and preciousness of life in the womb and the beauty of adoption, explaining how one life can impact so many.
It seems like it, and it's like, God, his publicist really isn't worth whatever her retainer is.
We're going to be marching together this afternoon. But after this day is over, I want us all to remember to continue the marching orders that have been given to us by our Commander-in-Chief, who lives in the heavenly places. And his
I thought he was going to say
executive
Trump,
orders
Danielle. I
trump
did.
all other executive orders.
I know, I was
And the
thinking too, I was
mandates
like,
from heaven remind
Yeah.
us to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. That's what we will be doing this afternoon, and I'm proud to be with you. God bless you guys.
Okay, well, that was Kirk Cameron. But before we talk about whatever the fuck he just said, I wanted to introduce our guest now, who is Danielle Perez, a comedian, writer, actor, and you've probably seen on Curb Your Enthusiasm, and was a new face to watch at the Just for Laughs comedy show. Danielle, thank you for being with us and already weighing in, but I wanted to formally introduce you.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Wow, we really just witnessed. I feel like I've been hit by a train.
Yeah, but you're right.
I'm
You were saying
like,
you felt like you've been hit by a bus of bullshit. Is that the word you were going to use?
yeah,
That's what I would have said.
basically, my head hurts so much from these people. The narrative of like we're for adoption, and the silence while the woman with Down syndrome was speaking. It's like,
Also, this new narrative that adoption is an alternative. It's not new, but just this like growing narrative that adoption is an alternative to parenthood or an alternative to abortion is like wild. Because like anyone who proposes that may have never experienced pregnancy. Like it's long and it's grueling.
And there can be many complications. Like, I mean, the truth is that abortion is safer than pregnancy and birth, like straight up. Like it's just
by a lot.
And also too, like Black women have really high mortality rates, like when giving birth. And it is like a forced birth movement. It's not pro-life. It's forced birth.
Oh, it's not like it is in fact 1000% a forced birth movement. This is exactly what they're pushing for. It's not a pro-life movement because pro-life would acknowledge that, yeah, for Black women, for any person, pregnancy is 1,000 times more. It's not a statistical number, but so much more dangerous than abortion. And also, people should be pregnant because they want to be pregnant.
Right? I mean, you have to be caring for, it's a long-term project to carry something for 9 months.
Literally never stops. I'm in my 40s and my mom's around a lot. Like, she might want to do other things. Who knows? I've had a child and an abortion, and I feel like each one was like a powerful choice I made because I wanted to. And like, how terrifying if I had to do any of those things when I didn't want to. It's really disturbing. And yeah, I'm like, adoption is not an alternative to anything. That's a whole different choice that people should be available to take, but like not forced into.
Exactly. That's the thing. It's that if you don't want to have an abortion, don't get one. But you don't force people to give birth. It just is the same way. It's like you wouldn't force someone to adopt. How can you? Also, it's just, why would you want someone to give birth to a child that they don't want, to like live with that active anger and resentment, to be born into a situation that, the people who are pregnant recognize is not optimal for children.
And I think that the reason that they can even do this is, again, the way that they shame and blame the abortion procedure and people who have abortions. I feel like when Professor McLemore was talking earlier, and she was like, you know, the study said that people who didn't have the abortion that they wanted ended up with like much more uncomfortable outcomes. And it's like, don't we want the best for our neighbors? And also, like, I think it's the fact that we don't get to talk about these things that, like, you know, anecdotal evidence that's not the same as a proper rigorous study, like the turnaround study she talked about. But like, I know from just conversations with people in my life, most people who've had abortions do have children and are just sure that like they don't have the capacity right now to do it again. That parenting is a whole ass job, and it's not easy, and it's sometimes not fun, and like you shouldn't do it if you don't want to.
Yeah, but it's like this, you know, reframing that it's like they're pro-life. It's like, again, like other people on the feed have been saying, it's where is the, you know, higher minimum wage? Where are the programs that help you know, new parents? Where is the funding for public school, you know, education? Where is the support system? Where is the healthcare? Where are the actual things that can help new parents raise healthy, happy children?
That people need for functional society. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, 1000%. It's kind of wild to see they have this whole rally that's just about like the choices you might want to make about your healthcare and your body and your life and your future do not matter as much. Also, what's wild is like, you know, their slogan for this march is equality begins at the womb, but like I would put actual money on like 90% of these people would not care about Black people like once they're born.
I mean, but also it's like the wild thing where it's like they've like understood like how to co-opt this progressive language where they're now talking about equality.
Yeah.
Oh, you care about equality? That's something you're interested in? Like, this is a civil rights movement? It's not.
And they've been co-opting that language for.
Oh my God, saying all lives matter.
Danielle, my head exploded. My head exploded when they got her to say all lives matter.
She had an MLK quote and then said all lives matter in the same breath.
In the same breath.
I was like, I'm living in the upside down.
But it's also like how they trotted out a person who has Down syndrome out to talk about like why everybody should have whatever child they have that has Downs. And like, you know, choosing to have a child that needs a lot of support is a choice that someone should make informed and ready to walk into that. It's wild. Yeah, I don't know. It's like they sort of look and they're like, who can come out here and say some bullshit for us that looks like they're not affected? It's crazy.
I know. Hi guys.
And then their big headline.
Hey. Hi Danielle. I wanted to talk. They're about to bring up this like dollar store Don Draper priest who we do not need to hear from. He is from Duluth. Ain't nobody got time for him. He's got the #1 podcast. I think it's called Reading the Bible. Like, he did a podcast where he read the Bible, but he kind of looks like him. So I'm sure there's a whole lot of like Carmela Soprano crave watching, thirst watching the priest read the Bible. So let's look at him. Hi, isn't he the dollar store Don Draper? Am I wrong?
Oh my gosh, he is
dollar store for sure.
Right,
that haircut, very dollar store.
Very dollar store. I wanted to ask you quickly though, Danielle. Like, as we're watching like Kurt Cameron, and like you're a comedian, you're also somebody who's part of the disability community. Like, there's this whole convergence here of like, who the fuck gets to decide what it means to live in the world, in the abilities that you have. It shouldn't be these people.
No, definitely not. These people, you know, they're the type that go, "You're so brave." It's like, yeah, because maybe I am brave because I exist in a world where you're trying to legislate my body. Jesus. It's so it's just so upsetting. Like I've had an abortion. I made the right choice for me. Um, and it's it's so personal. Like what I don't understand like the obsession because that's what this is. Like Liz, you've talked about how they're so laser and hyper focused on abortion and it's like why do you want to control people's bodies so much? You know, people
As
just
far
want to live their lives in the best way that they can. And for people, some people that includes having an abortion, having a safe, legal medical procedure. Like that's what it is. But they're dragging like, you know, morality into it where that woman with Down syndrome, she's like very deeply Catholic. And it's like, okay, you know, good for you. You know, that works for you. But there's a separation of church and state for a reason. I don't need your. And also, what's like wild about this is like, I feel like the pro-life movement is like one of like the very few ways where like Catholics and like Christians are like that hand emoji. You know what I mean? Because like, you know, Christmas at my family with my nana who's super Catholic and my aunt who's born again, they don't get along very well.
That is
They
like,
do not
you know,
really get
Danielle,
along
that's
together.
a good point because people think that it's like this religious monolith. And it's like, I mean, I was brought up Catholic and I dated a Methodist guy, and his mom was like, "You people are satanic because you worship the
Right, you're heathens. You have idols. And
I was like, I'm fucking your son, like before we're married. So like, you should be for a lot of other reasons, not just the idolatry of like, they also give the woman some credit, like weirdly. So it's
yeah, it's like, oh, we got married. Wow.
I know.
I want to step in as a non-religious person and say the other place they come together is wanting to talk to you about their religions.
Yes, very true. Very true.
Me, not interested.
Danielle, thank you so much for joining us and bringing your perspective and coming on and like also being part of what we do. You were part of a really great video that we made with a bunch of people talking about their abortions, which is been incredibly powerful for patients in waiting rooms. So I want to thank you for that. I can't wait to get you out on the road with us when COVID is over. And everybody, please, please, please check out Danielle Perez on all the social medias because she is a bitch to follow who is awesome. We love you so much, dear. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Liz. Thank you.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. And we're going to go now live on the ground to Zach Roberts, who is a photojournalist who has been covering March for Life yesterday and today. Hey, Zach, what is going on? What is the temperature?
I don't even know. I can say is I had a bottle of orange juice in my bag, and it is now slush. It is that temperature, whatever that temperature is.
I got that. So Zach, what is the vibe here? What have you been seeing? Like, you know, we were talking earlier with Robin Marty, who's going to be joining us again, and she was talking about how the veneer. Oh, I think we might have lost Zach. Did we lose you, Zach? You frozen? Let's wait till we get. Let's
sure is.
Zach, and then let's hear from Dollar Store. Oh, Zach, are you back?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry.
Oh, great. So what I wanted to ask you is Robin Marty was talking about how when they're on the stage and in front of the cameras, like, you know, they're headliners, if you will, you know, they put on this veneer so that they look like they're normal and care about the babies and care about women. But we all know that they're not in front of those cameras, and where you are on the ground with all of them, they're presenting a very different message. Tell me about the messaging you're seeing on the ground versus the respectability play from the stage.
Well, I mean, let's if I could zoom in behind me, you'd see about 3 or 4 different "Let's Go Brandon" flags. And so I asked a couple of them, would Jesus say "Let's go Brandon"? And it was mixed. Some said yes, he would. Some said no, he wouldn't. But it is like, I mean, I talked to a younger man wearing a "Make America Great Again" hat, and asked him about Trump's that Chris Matthews interview where he said that he would consider putting women in jail if they had abortions. And he said, yeah, not the death penalty because I'm a Catholic, but life in jail. That's what you get for murder. And so once you get past that second question of, whether you believe or not in abortion, or you support it or not support it, it gets really uncomfortable. Because they don't really have a lot of answers that are comfortable for the PR of this whole movement that stands behind me, and so it becomes very uncomfortable the moment that you kind of like keep pushing that question, because the answer is yes, they want to put women in jail that have that dare to have reproductive freedom. And that's what they want. This whole march is about that. Is making sure that women specifically are under the thumb of, I'm a Catholic, under the thumb of Catholicism, going back to that, under the thumb of Christianity. And, I talked to a bunch of groypers. That's Nick Fuentes is his gang. He's a Christian fascist. They're out here. Nick is not, because he's been subpoenaed by the January 6th Commission for his part in the organization of that insurrection. And they talked for quite a bit about, traditional marriage and going back to traditional values. And eventually they slid into, well, I like the fact that there's Western architecture everywhere. And they start hitting all of the bullet points of basically modern American fascism, which is really loving. Oh, we just love what we're Western chauvinists, like the Proud Boys claim to be. It's like, no, you just want Western power. You want to go back to your imagined idea of what the 50s were, and what your grandparents maybe told you what the 50s were about, and that's what you want. And it's really disturbing about how many, you can hear the voices possibly in the back. I would say half the people here are school kids. Half of them have been, bussed in by school, and they are into it. I'm blanking on the priest's name that just came on to do the final prayer.
Father Mike.
It was like Coachella. The screams for a I cover this world in the way that I cover other fascist organizations. But I don't know this man, and it is weird to be in an audience where 10,000 people are cheering his name. I mean, that is just a weird thing.
So Zach, this is one of the reasons we desperately wanted to cover this march, because Father Mike is the number one podcast. Like, he's got one of the number one religious podcasts ever. He's like the hot priest. He literally looks like Don Draper. I don't know how close you can get him, but he's got like jaw and the thing. And he is a rock star. And we as movement people on the left, and even centrist folks, do not know who the inspirers are on their side. We don't know who these people are. Nick Fuentes is a massive figure. He's a power organizer. Nobody knew who the Oath Keepers were, the 3%. Nobody really knows who the leadership is in March for Life, or any of these organizations that get this profound amount of people going. And so, I hear you. And I was wondering, one of the things I wanted to go back to with you really quickly is, you were talking about them revealing who they were and what they believed in and what they thought the penalty was. Did you have to drag that out of them, or were they really willing to just let you know, or was it a little bit of both?
It's a little bit of both. The one guy that I was talking about previously that had the Make America Great hat on and everything, he saw the question coming. I could tell that he's because I had to give the context of Donald Trump, so it wasn't just a straight lead in. But they, for the most part, anytime, because I've covered other rallies like this, and around that time as well, when that interview came out, I asked those questions as well. And you kind of have to, do you have to drag it out? And you're like, well, and you're like, well, what's the consequences then? Like that, there's consequences for things. And, it can't just all be, especially in their world, in the more conservative, in the very conservative world, consequences aren't just, you're going to burn in hell forever, or you're, as a Catholic, you're going to be excommunicated from the church. And so, I did also, by the way, I caught Congressman Dan Crenshaw, and I was able to ask him a couple questions. Hat nod to another journalist named Zach, who works for the Daily Beast, who caught the eye patch and grabbed him first. But I asked him. They're now looking. He said that he would be, if Roe is overturned, he would be potentially looking for a federal congressional ban on abortions. And so, like that, this is what the end goal is. We have to stop thinking that. A lot of conversation on Twitter when talking about Roe being overturned, and be like, well, there'll be blue states and people can travel. It'll be a burden, but whatever, I guess. Never mind if you live in the middle of Texas, trying to get to the next state that allows, I think we're covered this. But sorry, go ahead.
Well, we're 4 votes away from, a Congress that would pass a federal ban on abortion. When the 22 midterms happen and people are talking about the shellacking we're going to take, these haven states and blue states, if we have a federal ban on abortion, it won't matter what the state's rules are, because the federal government is going to try to ban it. We are in serious trouble, and people need to be paying attention. And Zach, I know you're freezing. Thank you so much for being out there and covering stuff, and for filling us in on really sort of the beyond the veneer of what they present out there. It's really important for folks to know. So thank you, Zach, so much.
Thanks so much, Liz.
You are so great. Let's bring Marie and Moji back on, and looks like they're closing up. And what folks might not know happens next is they now march on to the thousands of them will march on to the Supreme Court and be in the area of the Supreme Court and on the steps of the Supreme Court, and start doing their rally there and having more people speaking about abortion regret. And it just feels wild. That was a lot to talk about, and we were trying to get guests on and off, and I want to thank Monica McLemore and the Boom Lawyer gals and Danielle, and we're going to be bringing Rob and Marty back on in a second. But sorry that we're shuffling people on and off, but it was incredible how, I don't know, the way they can fool us, that parade of sort of respectability. And now they're winning, and it feels really scary. Moji.
Yeah, they very much are winning, and it's terrifying. And overwhelming. And it's not a reason for us to give up and stop fighting back. We have to, but it's really
more important than ever, I think, to realize they've had this rally. What are the fruits of the rally? What happens? What are the programs like, when they organize their, clinic invasions, and their standing outside of clinics, and their model legislation that they write for politicians? Like, how does that affect real world folks providing care and patients?
Yeah, no, that's
and I think that it's a thing that we need to talk about. And I think that what we want to do in the post show is really start talking to folks who are working in the field and who know that. And so I think we want to bring on now the escort coordinator in Toledo, Ohio. And also our Abortion Access Front volunteer coordinator, Kristen Haiti. Hey, Kristen. I think Kristen's popping on in a hot second.
She's near. It's happening shortly.
She is near. There's Kristen. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, friends. Hey, Kristen. It's so good to see you. Thank you for joining us. You, in particular, have experienced harassment from the March for Life community, and especially during something in particular called 40 Days for Life, that is the other rest of the year, basically. I'm wondering if you can tell us, as a clinic escort, someone who's regularly outside of a clinic in Ohio, what is it that you have to endure, and what do other patients have to endure throughout the year from these folks that we're watching today?
Definitely chaos, shame, and harassment, especially during 40 Days for Life. You know, all of these chapters, they put out their calls for people to come and join, but at least for most clinics, most escorts, you know your regular protesters. You know what they're capable of, what they'll do. But when you have campaigns like 40 Days for Life, they'll bring in dozens of people who don't know the rules. So you end up with people trespassing, with arguments, and just it exacerbates the problems that you already see on a daily basis. And can we just ditch 40 Days for Life? Like, just stop it. You guys do it like 8,000 times a year. It should just be a yearly thing. Stop pretending that it's just these small campaigns. Every other day is 40 Days for Life.
Yep. I mean, they're all about that, though. They're all about having these overlapping holidays and these, like, I know you were watching the same march as us, and I saw the white saviorship that Kirk Cameron put forward when he was like, we adopt, we give, we do this. That's the same type of people. I also escort, as Kristen knows. That's the same type of people we see outside the clinic. So they're bringing that same white savior energy while they're, like you mentioned, Kristen, not knowing the local laws. Like if someone breaks the law there, how do your cops respond, Kristen? Like, does that person actually end up getting in trouble? Or is it this, what I often see, I feel like, is a situation like, oh, I'm an out-of-towner, it's fine. Well, you're all out-of-towners. You're all doing this tourism to clinics, and I can't imagine how that impacts someone like you and your patients there.
Yeah, and I think, like nearly every other clinic, every other escort group, you really can't guarantee a police response. It depends on why they're coming. It depends on the officer you've received. We've had, during 40 Days for Life, our local chapter, we call it the Fancy Priest Parade. They get a parade permit on the street that we're on, and then their bishop, like, marches down the street in full regalia, like they're holding a canopy over him because, I don't know, I think he's like a vampire and the sun just sets him on fire if that happens. But when they do those things, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And we had so many problems with disparity in policing. Like, during these parades, suddenly where we started countering, we've turned it into a fundraiser, this great pro-abortion bake sale for our local abortion fund. All of a sudden, we weren't allowed on public sidewalk, but they could do whatever they wanted. And 3 years later, we still haven't figured out why it is that they're allowed to do whatever they want and we aren't. So you can't count on it. You just kind of have to bank on, pending an extreme emergency, we are handling everything, and you just got to do it yourself.
Thank you so much, Kristen. We are so happy to have you on, and we know you're holding it down in Ohio. Thank you. We've got Robin now joining us back, author of Post-Roe, America's Handbook, and the Director of Operations at West Alabama Women's Center. Robin, how are you feeling?
Hey, I'm having a little bit of, like, upset to my stomach because you made me watch Kirk Cameron, but other than that, I'm feeling great.
I'm still fixated on him. I'm sorry, because I did a dumb amount of research on that, and then he just shows up, and talk about someone who just dictated how, it dictates their religion to dictate so much and affects so many other people's lives.
Like, right now, I'm calling him the East Coast Kelsey Grammer, because apparently Kelsey Grammer is down doing the West Coast March for Life, I believe, which is later this weekend, or I don't know. I used to be in touch with all this stuff, and now I've lost track.
We're wondering, so you've been going through not only these additional draconian abortion laws in Alabama, but you also have trigger bans that are coming into effect, and this is all looming over the overturning of Roe. And you are someone who not only thinks about the patient load, but you also have staff. You have the ability to provide care. You're in an operations capacity. And I'm wondering how you're doing, like, how do you plan for this?
You really can't. Like, one of the things that's interesting is that as an author, and my background is abortion access across the United States. So I knew what this was going to look like. I knew what this would look like as states started shutting down and as clinics started shutting down. Now that I'm here, this is not in any way, shape, or form what I had thought would happen over the last few years. For one thing, it's happened much faster than anybody could have expected. With Texas being essentially closed at this moment, we knew that if Texas closed, then we are going to see patients go up to Kansas, over to Oklahoma, over to New Mexico, up to Colorado. What I was not expecting, and Dr. Leah Torres and I wrote an op-ed about this, about the fact that nobody was going to ever come to Alabama because Alabama's laws were too strict and it was too far away and we had too few clinics. And I spoke way too soon. In the last 3 weeks, we have seen almost twice as many patients as we see in a month. That's what's happening in Alabama. Part of this is because we were able to change our operations so that Alabama, for us, if you are traveling from out of state or even in state, you can do your informed consent paperwork back at your home. And so you only need to have one in-person visit with us at this moment. That has brought people from Mississippi, people from Louisiana, and now people from Texas all the way over because their nearest clinics are booked 3-4 weeks out and people cannot get in. That's how bad this has become at this point. If you have one more state shut down, I don't know what's going to happen. If you, like, knowing that Texas is essentially, I'm going to say it, closed until there's a Supreme Court ruling, because obviously now the state Supreme Court can hold on to it as long as they want, that's trouble. We have Florida actually considering introducing that same bill. If we lose Florida, Florida is, I mean, there's no place for people to go. We have Florida and we have Georgia. Alabama can't take this in right now. And so we are working twice as much as we used to. We see twice as many patients, but we can't staff. Like, I had somebody ask me earlier today, does money help? Money always helps, obviously. Give to local clinics, especially independent clinics. But I can't hire staff because I would need to vet my staff. I would need to train my staff, and I can't staff anything up knowing that as soon as June, we could lose the right to a legal abortion altogether in the state. So we are just essentially plowing through because that's all we can do. You add to that the fact that when you have clinics that are closing, you're not just getting their patients. Now, apparently, you're getting their protesters. So we ended up with Operation Save America people over at our back door screaming at us yesterday because Mississippi was closed for the day. And so they had nowhere to go. And they went to Montgomery and that was closed for the day. So they came over to us. Like, the anti-abortion activists are doing the same thing as the patients. That's like a whole other realm of things that I wasn't even considering. So needless to say, things are rough right now. That's where we are.
The story is has been emerging profoundly in places that folks that we're talking to. There's a 4-week wait to get procedures in Oklahoma because of Texas. There's a 6-week wait to get procedures in Louisiana because of overflow. Now we're hearing about what's happening in Alabama. You talked about one state. I think we need to talk about 12 states have trigger bans that say if Roe is overturned, 38 million people of reproductive age are without care where they live. It's profoundly unsettling. And also I think, what are you in your 79th printing of Handbook for Post-Roe America? I feel like you just keep updating it. Like, how is that even a thing you were able to do, right? And so in thinking about from this moment on to June, what should we be planning for short term? And then what should we be thinking about for long term? Because we've just taken to saying when Roe v. Wade is overturned, not if. There's no if anymore. It doesn't feel like it's an if. What can people be doing to help keep abortion access around, help people access the care they need, and support the people providing the care? And also legislatively, what do we need to be doing, Robin? We can't leave this day with like, we're just fucked. Like, I can't, like, I feel like we're just fucked. And yesterday I kind of had a breakdown on Twitter where I'm like, I'm broken. Thank you to the 200 people who actually stand up constantly and care. Where are the rest of you? But how do we inspire? What should we do?
No pressure. I can fix everything. Here I go. Okay, so I really can't. I wish I could, but I will tell you that for the next 6 months, every person's job is to give whatever resources they can to independent clinics in states that are likely to lose the ability to provide care. So find a state. Trust me, it's not too hard. Pick any state in the South, any place in the Midwest. Give to an independent clinic, or if you want to spread it out, the Abortion Care Network has a Keep Our Clinics Open website that you can provide money to and be able to help them that way. Money is always going to help. I know I said that we can't hire staff, but I can tell you I'm giving staff bonuses because they deserve it and they're working twice as much as they were before. So money always helps. But we also need to take the next 6 months to think about what abortion access should look like in the future and how to prepare for that. One of the things that's happening is we see a lot of focus go into, okay, we are going to have half the states lose access, including the entirety of the South. How do we give resources to move people to these states that will still be open? But that's stupid. That is not the way that we need to be looking at this. We need to look at how do we get abortion to people in their homes? Be that getting a better like support for self-managed abortion at home, trying to do everything we can to end all of the restrictions on abortion pills being mailed to people, because you can do everything that you want. You can throw as much money as you want at a person to help them get from Alabama to Illinois in order to get an abortion. But if that person is disabled, if that person does not have ID, if that person has too many things going on that they can't take 3 days to be able to leave and come back, we still have a situation where people without resources can't access abortion. That's the thing that's being ignored when we talk about all of the money and practical support that we're going to make happen. People need to get abortions in their homes if they can. So we need to look at that and figure out where are the points of pressure that we can focus on? Can we work on attorney generals in states or prosecutors in cities that will say, if people end up doing their own care, we will not prosecute that. That's the sort of pressure that we need to do. Can we do it city by city if we're in a red state? Can we do it state by state if we're in a region? These are the places where we can apply the pressure to make sure that people don't get arrested, because what it comes down to is we are going to have to put all of our effort into making sure that people are not arrested for using their human right, whether you consider it a constitutional right or not. It's their human right to be able to decide if they want to continue a pregnancy. That's where the fight is, and that's how we need to focus.
Robin, I think that is so important. And I think I know that I'm going to really be thinking with my team about all the different ways that we can bring abortion to people in their homes and advocate for that safely. I think those are such great words. Tell people immediately how they can find you and how they can support you before we set you free into your day.
Set me free. I am Robin Marty at Twitter. I'm also Robin Marty on Facebook. You can find me at West Alabama Women's Center, which is alabortionclinic.com. We have places you can donate there. You can also feel free to donate tax exempt. That's not the right word. This is
tax you can get a tax break.
Yes, you can get a tax break if you donate to Yellowhammer Fund. If you want to make sure it goes straight to the clinic, just tell them that this is for West Alabama Women's Center. Yellowhammer Fund owns all the stock there. And also, please buy my new copy of my book, because it has so much more information about self-managed abortion, including not just how to protect yourself, but how to protect yourself if you are going to be accessing abortion in any way that may not be legal. So from a both personal standpoint, but also staying secure online, and staying secure online if you're going to be helping people access abortion that may not be within a proper clinic setting.
Robin Marty, I say it often. I don't say it often to you. You are a treasure. You are one of the reasons that I fight so hard. You are an incredible human, and thank you so much for all you do and for everyone and for your team, and thank you. Robin Marty's book is The Handbook for a Post-Roe America. Robin, thank you for joining us, and anything we can do to help, you know we're here.
Anytime.
Thank you. All right, let's bring Moji back on. What a day. Holy moly, Rocky, as the kids say. I don't know, the kids don't say that.
I don't know what the kids are saying. I have no idea what the kids are saying.
This was eye-opening. There's a lot of big takeaways. Moj, what is your takeaway from this palooza of patriarchy?
You know, I'm always here to like keep my spirits up, but it's tough. It's really tough. I think my takeaways are shit is fucked up and we need to plan. So I feel like, you know, step one, talk to your people, make a community plan. You know what I mean? If you're going to be the person with the abortion pills, be that person and let your people know. And if that's not what you're going to do, it's fine. Just in some way or another, become your own abortion fund. And by your own, I mean for your community, or a font of abortion resources. Like, know where you can ship pills, know where there are pills stashed in your community. You know, I live in New York, and so I'm supremely blessed. But like, if you're going to Mexico, pick some up. That's, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's about talking. And I think the more we talk to each other, the more we destigmatize, the more we realize that like, abortion is a resource that we all need. The need for abortion is not going to go away. And when we talk to each other, then we also recognize that more people around us than you think have abortions. And when we know that, when we recognize that, when we can really talk about our experiences, the benefits that we had, even our regrets, you know, I'm not saying people don't regret abortions. I'm just also saying I regret removing one of my wisdom teeth, right? Like, you have regrets. It's part of living. But having these conversations allows people to make really powerful decisions with information and without shame and stigma. So like, do that, be that, go forth. Marie, what you got?
Same regarding the shame and stigma. The whole point of March for Life is being in the streets. This is a lot of people. It's a concerning number of people, the number of legislators that are out there, but there are far more of us. So continuing, as Moji said, to destigmatize, to work towards dismantling that ecosystem that's been structured to create, to go after and condemn publicly in the public square, literally, those folks that need abortions. And I'm also not convinced that Jeannie Mancini does not know that Uzbekistan is not in North Dakota. She might think they're one and the same.
I have to say though, Marie, I've been to North Dakota, and there's strikingly barren similarities. A lot of militias, a lot of just like hours and hours of driving through winter like tundra. I think areas of Uzbekistan that if you were to drop them in, you'd go, am I near Bismarck or whatever the capital of Uzbekistan? So I feel like that's right. To sort of echo both of you, I just can't say enough. It's not enough for you to say you're pro-choice and be outraged. These people have a mission and a focus and a purpose, and abortion is their sole focus and purpose. And the reason that you saw 30 senators and congresspeople standing on that stage today was because they feel the pressure that if they don't stand with these anti-abortion people, they will lose their jobs. We need to bring that pressure to our elected officials to say abortion is a priority because it's a human right. And we feel so strongly about it that if you don't feel that way, you will lose your jobs. And until our movement gets there, we're going to continue to be outgunned and outnumbered and outmanned. And so take this step forward with us to say that you're going to put your whole self into this movement, because we need your whole self. It can't just be the same folks, and it can't just be women, and it can't just be people with uteruses and have capabilities to have kids in this. It has to be all of us. So that's my takeaway. And I'm hoping that like you seeing these people and hearing from these experts makes you realize that it's time. So, so that is a wrap. That is a wrap. And a big thanks to all of our guests who come in and out. And we're just so great about like rolling with us on that. And especially thank you for watching and learning with us. So appreciative. And that's just also thanks to the team at Abortion Access Front and all of our partners and our producers who helped us pull this thing off. So Paul and Angela and Kat, thank you. And the whole team who was on social media doing it. I just want to give you a big shout out too.
And if you want to commit to changing the direction of the ship before it hits the iceberg, and the iceberg is right here. It's right at your nose. You can join us at aafront.org/volunteer and then sign up to fight back with us.
And you can learn about all sorts of different types of extremist organizations at hypocritesunmasked.com.
That's right. And if you're catching this for the first time and this is the first you've ever heard of it, just reminding you that this is a very special show. It's not our normal time slot. You can join us for new episodes of Feminist Buzzkills Live every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern on the Abortion Access Front YouTube channel if you're not watching it here. So do that. Go and subscribe so that you can learn about all kinds of dope shit and laugh along with the hypocrisy. Because if we're not laughing, sadly, we would never stop crying.
And next week, to continue with the yucks, and by yucks I mean laughter, we'll be joined by the one and only Maria Bamford and Catherine Colbert, who's the attorney who argued the landmark case, Planned Parenthood v. Casey, before the Supreme Court. Huge deal.
Huge deal.
Huge. Plus, the latest news and all the things chipping away at our rights and what we can do to fight back.
And if you like your info in pod form, the feminist. Oh, Moji, I just said your line. Oh, who cares? The feminist.
Just go on. I would say yours, ma'am.
The Feminist Buzzkills podcast of our live show drops Sundays wherever you get your pod fix.
And we leave you now with an epic clip of Ben Shapiro, my personal fave, showing his whole tiny ass from his infamous March for Life speech in 2019.
The argument, I guess, here is that would you kill baby Hitler? And the truth is that no pro-life person on earth would kill baby Hitler, right? Because baby Hitler wasn't Hitler. Adult Hitler was Hitler. Baby Hitler was a baby. Right? What you presumably want to do with baby Hitler was take baby Hitler out of baby Hitler's house and move baby Hitler into a better house where he would not grow up to be Hitler, right? That's the idea.
Feminist Buzzkills Live is a production of Abortion Access Front. Subscribe to our YouTube at aafront.org/FBK sub.